Are we live? Do we know?
I don't know. I was waiting for some signal. I see a little bleeding heart.
I think she's... Okay. This is Universal Lunch, Out of Office Hours, a limited run live streamed web series on the occasion of Futurespective, an exhibition with events and happenings that demonstrate how design inquiry engages in open-ended, extra-disciplinary exchange. Futurespective opens this Friday at the Institute of Contemporary Art at the Maine College of Art in Portland, Maine. I'm Jimmy Liu.
And I'm Gabrielle Esperdy, and we are broadcasting live from the install of Futurespective. The exhibition asks a simple question. What does it mean to rethink the past in the present to point to the future of design, culture, and life in general? And over the course of 8 weeks, we will gather a diverse group of thinkers and makers to pick around answers to this question relative to design, to culture, or to anything else that our guests would like to discuss.
Today, on our preview episode, we're joined by Margo Halverson, Emily Luce, and Denise Gonzales Crisp, curators, along with my co-host of Futurespective, and also lifelong inquirers with, through, and by design. Gabrielle, so good to be here kind of in person with you, although we're sitting in different parts of the gallery, so we can make this broadcast happen.
Yes, it's nice to actually be sitting down for a few minutes after the flurry of activities of this week, which have involved everything from making curatorial decisions to putting tape on walls, moving ladders around, deciding what's going to go in the pop-up shop, etc. So it's been literally a 24/7 endeavor to bring it all together after months and months of planning.
Well, it looks really good. I came here straight from the airport last night, and I walked in maybe at 10:30, and there was still lots of action going on. I helped with some taping, which is crucial. It's a crucial activity.
Yes, you know, it's one of those things we all know that everything we do in life comes down to putting things in binders and putting tape on things.
Yeah, taping it on the wall.
Think the other thing that was exciting about having you walk through the door, Jimmy, was that you joined a hearty band of, as you put it, lifelong inquirers, folks who have flown in from around the country just to give us a hand with this because they are committed to design inquiry as a method and a practice, and that is an incredibly gratifying thing to see.
Yeah, and this is something that I want to touch on later in our conversation, is that, you know, when I walked in, I was telling Margo that it really felt like DI in here, in the gallery space, just kind of walking in, not having seen it at all, but kind of been in conversation with you guys behind the scenes. It's felt really good, the energy in the room, to see it all come to life.
Yeah, and I think that's actually something that's maybe worth teasing out a little bit for any of our viewers who aren't really familiar with what it means to have something seem like it was DI. Obviously, DI is the abbreviation for design inquiry, but one tends to use it as a kind of shorthand, both for the immersive experience of an inquiry, a gathering of thinkers and makers to probe deeply into a given topic relative to the discourse of design, but also to people who are groping the vibe of a particular methodology that involves improv and spontaneity and a little bit of play as a way of thinking through what design might be. And that's what hopefully will be on display in the galleries during the Futurespective.
Yeah, and today at the end of our broadcast today, I think we're going to get a quick tour of the entire exhibition as a quick preview for our viewers. So looking forward to that
Yes,
as well.
a preview of the work that's still in progress. I assure you that the ladder behind me is not merely a prop, but is in fact still going to be used before we get kicked out of these galleries at the end of the day today, so that the preparators and the directors of the ICA can do their magic tomorrow to make everything look astonishingly clean, sharp, professional, well lit. And to bring that gloss of professionalism to the chaos that we've created.
It's a great kind of chaos to be in.
It is, and I think one of our colleagues referred not long ago to DesignInquiry as did he say parallel universe or alternative universe? But I think both of those are apt because they conjure up that kind of stepping outside of your everyday realms in order to engage in something that is just as perhaps more stimulating than what you do on a regular basis, but that can also serve, however exhausting it might be, to recharge you and energize you for whatever is relevant in your own practice as a designer. So it's nice to step out.
Yeah, I mean, I feel already recharged since being here only for less than 24 hours. The energy is strong and good. I'm happy to report. Shall we? I'm really looking forward to talking to our guests today. So shall we get this show on the road, you think?
I think we should. And I have to say, I am also excited to talk to my co-curators occupying this, shall we say, double métier of interviewer and curator at the same time. It's nice to have the opportunity to just step back for a moment and collect your thoughts, particularly when you're among friends. So yeah, let's do this.
Okay. Well, I am excited to introduce our first guests. So we have 3 today, and I'll be introducing them each separately, and then I think we'll have a group conversation at the end. And I'm interested today in asking each one of our guests about a different aspect of DesignInquiry. And so my first guest is Margo Halverson, one of the original founders of DesignInquiry. And I'm going to read an excerpt from a Design Observer article that was just published yesterday, I believe. And it says, the ethos for DI from the start was to host a dinner where conversations didn't end after dessert, but could continue for a week. DI believes that the best interactions happen in hallways, while chopping vegetables or walking from room to room. Indeed, DI seeks to extend such interactions by bringing the in-between moments deliberately to a particular place, space, and time, often Vinyl Haven, often in June. DI workshops and events are not designed to produce set outcomes or to get things done. And they do not follow traditional modes of operations. There are no decisions or professional development opportunities. Instead, framers frame and bring whatever they bring, be it a project, a prompt, an expertise, a way of being, a thing to cook, or some research to share. Margo Halverson, welcome to Universal Lunch. Oh, I think you have to unmute you. Hold on. Unmute. Look at us.
No, that's all right. This is our dress rehearsal. We're
still rehearsing. Okay, Denise is gonna run and tell.
Okay, I got it.
We're all actually in one space. Okay, Margo Halverson, welcome
hear me?
again. Yes, welcome again.
Welcome, Margo.
Hello, thank you. Thanks for having me, Jimmy and Emily and Gabrielle and Denise. And I'm in
Margo.
the center gallery here. This is what's moving behind me are some of the films that are going to be shown in this middle space. So that's the moving pieces back here.
Oh, it's beautiful. It's one of my favorite rooms. Okay, Margo, I have a question for you about I just read from that Design Observer article. And in the article, it really talks about how design inquiry is a thing that's really hard to explain to the uninitiated. And I think the best way for me to begin to unpack some of this is to have you talk a little bit about that experience, just from an experiential standpoint, not quite what it means, but what happens to you when you come to design inquiry?
Okay, I didn't hear most of that question. You kept cutting out. So
Oh, no.
I got the very last one. What happens to you when you come to design inquiry, right? Is that the short version? Okay.
Yeah, and so more so about, like, I want to start with just talking about the experience before we get to unpacking what it means or what it does. But just how does it feel? Because I think that dinner seems to be a critical component.
Right. But before that happens is usually we have design inquiry often, well, every summer on an island on Vinyl Haven, and you've traveled to get to Maine, to get to an island on a ferry, and then to the places where we're staying there at the Poor Farm. And so already you may be a little unfamiliar and uncomfortable, which is by design. To be set into a place that is unknown. And that sets up a really interesting negotiation with what you do and how you approach the week, which is totally open. We don't come and people don't show portfolios, and it's not about that. It's about the topic of the week, and it's about experimentation, and that happens, I think, also in our communication with everyone before they come. The experience too, what is really key to that experience is that we live together and we cook together. There's no, coffee service at 10 o'clock. We're in wherever we have design inquiry, which has been in Marfa and Detroit and Montreal. Oh, look, there's a little... it's important that everything is visible, that everything is equally important. The cooking, the discussions, the making, the not making.
So let me ask you about how do you begin to cultivate that kind of openness? Does distance or dislocation inform how DI decides where or when to hold the gatherings?
How do we cultivate it?
Yeah, how do you cultivate that openness that you're describing?
I think cultivation is the word because it's always changing. And what we've learned is that it changes depending on the people that are there. And so it's a constant practice of being open and responding to what's in front of you. And it's a constant attention to not preconceiving and being open to redirecting or flexibility, because there really isn't direction. We say we're flat. We like to work with flat hierarchy, but of course that takes some cultivation.
So what do you mean when you say flat hierarchy? How does that work out with participants in particular?
Well, one of the things when we started Design Inquiry was to think about everyone as a teacher and everyone as a student. And I was the director of Maine Summer Institute for 10 years, and I would have the then faculty talk about how much they learned and how they would like to be a student in a kind of environment where everyone gives and everyone takes. And so we designed a program where that it wasn't teacher and student, and we for them, and those are the right kind of participants. So
Okay,
they don't
I
know
want to
what
get
to
back.
expect. Yeah.
I want to get back to the uninitiated and a little bit with Denise. Oh, sorry.
You
I
just
think
said my name. Are you moving on now, or are we moving on to the next?
We'll be, yes, but we're going to join you in a few minutes, Denise.
Okay, I'm sorry.
That's all right. Everyone's so eager to share their excitement and thoughts about the practice of design inquiry. Margo, did we give you an opportunity to answer that question fully?
I think so. I'm not sure. It's yeah, we cut out here and there, so it's kind of hard to concentrate.
We're going to have to embrace that as part of this thing.
That's right. That's right. That's the part about
Indeed, and I think that's the improv part of it. You merely can anticipate or guess at what your host just asked you, or what your interviewee just said.
And actually, I can add to that too of our one of our founding board members. I don't know if that's a real term or not, but one of our first board members was an actor who works a lot in improv. We learned a lot. He would do workshops with all of the design inquiry participants. So we learned a lot about improvisation and tried to translate that into the, I don't want to say event, but the happenings of the week.
And that's actually, that notion of improv is a really fine way to bring in Emily Luce to join this conversation. Emily is currently serving as president of Design Inquiry, a position that she's held for a number of years, which right there gives you a clue to the fact that although we practice flat hierarchy, we are not actually all that flat. But to pick up on that idea of improv, Emily, I wanted to talk about something that is a kind of fundamental to every gathering, which is a planning document that we fondly refer to as not the schedule, which in some ways is a kind of document that emerges out of, let's call it the practice of improv. It's a somewhat fluid schedule, signaling that while we do engage in framing and in intentionality, that we have a deep need to disrupt what we've even created, and to resist the comforts that come from knowing what's happening at 9, what's happening at 9:30, et cetera, what you get in a basically a hierarchical calendar of events. I'm wondering if you want to talk a little bit about how you see the not the schedule as a place of, in between, teetering between point A and point B. I'm going to pause because I might be frozen. Have I unfrozen?
I can hear you okay.
Hopefully. Okay, great.
I can hear you okay,
do you want to talk a little bit about how you see the evolving importance of that thing we call not the schedule?
Absolutely. The not the schedule is a pretty flat document. When we decide that a topic is urgent and timely, we develop a framing team, and that framing team comes together to engage the issue or the concepts, the research, and then it invites people to also engage with those ideas. And the framers are deeply considering the things that the people are putting on the table, really thinking about how the group might interact, about the projects that people are bringing, but there is no real plan for the week. So what the not the schedule includes is a description of who the person is, and that is presented as the person wants to present it. So it's not always a professional biography. Sometimes it's like, I'm just thinking about this all the time, and this is this is who I am, this is what I want to work on. And then a proposal or a prompt for a project. So something that is a little bit unformed. In fact, it's helpful to be unformed because once you arrive in this beautiful location with these wonderful engaged people, then you have everything can change. The schedule is completely malleable, and it responds to the conditions, and it draws upon your experience, your expertise, your references, the people around you, the environment, how late you stayed up the night before. So that's what not the schedule is. It's an assembly point. What's it called when you're about to sink and
right.
What's it called? Muster station. It's a muster station.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And so in that sense, is it it's a kind of document of attraction.
Right. And it absolutely changes during the week. We usually post it, and people will cross things out or smush them together or pull them into new forms. And that's what's so exciting about working on a topic together. The Not the Schedule really is a container for a bunch of ideas around a single topic.
Yeah. Do you think it could be considered something kind of halfway in between a conference program and, say, an academic syllabus, or neither of those really useful terms?
I would like to say that it's neither. I would like to say it's its own thing.
In true DI form, I like the slippages.
I think it's, in terms of rejecting those terms, I come back to something that you talked about, saying that it was a kind of living document, because in that sense, it's not contractual. And I think that's also, as opposed to being a contract, can we think of it as something that requires that, I know there's a phrase DesignInquiry likes to use, leap of faith?
Yeah, absolutely. But it's really important to emphasize that doesn't mean it's not rigorous. It's very serious work. It's that we're drawing upon core strength, it's agility, rather than planning. It's drawing upon skills that aren't so common in design practices up to now to help cultivate different ways of seeing things and doing things and working together.
Could you give us some examples of the kinds of projects that people typically present? Because I think our listeners might be really interested in that. I know, photography practices, knitting and weaving practices.
Yeah, there have been drumming practices. There have been cooking practices. There have been ghost engagement practices. There have been adventures, scavenger hunts, leaping, lots of documentation.
Would you say that do you think that those activities are, do most of the inquirers see those projects as autonomous, or is there a real intention to explore some dimension of the given theme or notions of place? How do you think inquirers kind of approach, maybe we could call it contextualizing the projects that they bring?
Obviously it varies based on the person and what they're bringing and what they really want to get out of it, but you can't help but be influenced by the place. That's a really important thing with DesignInquiry, and of course the topic rules. We have that even written down somewhere, that the topic rules. So it's not so much about a printed name on a conference program as it is a point of collaboration and a shared view.
Yeah, that seems to me to be a point worth stressing, that participants are curators, are programmers, rather than in the conventional way we think of most conferences and gatherings, in which there's the local co-host, the local host committee, et cetera. In this sense, it sounds as if from the schedule that every single person is actively involved in every single part of the week-long gathering.
Absolutely.
Emily, I'm curious about what you think attracts people to this kind of structure and flat hierarchy and not the schedule. What makes people want to do that? Because this is kind of, it's not a conference, it's not an academic thing. You can't I do put this on my CV, but it gets questions. So why is it attractive to so many people?
First, I would like to say that I am extremely proud that you get questions from putting that on your CV. Right on. DesignInquiry is a wonderful opportunity for people who are at a turning point in their practice. It can be transformative, and it really seems to work for people who are looking for the ineffable, the thing that you can't say what you're looking for. And I would say that, as framers, and for the people that keep coming back to DesignInquiry, it's very important that we create those portals for people to create this extra-disciplinary practice. So does that answer what your question is?
I mean, I feel like, I don't know if it's just my disposition as a designer, the designiness of my life. I think I'm always looking for info.
Right, exactly.
Just as a designer in general. So I feel like that's an attribute that where you'll find a lot of company, I think.
Yeah.
Which is why you guys have found so much company in designers, I think.
Aww.
And so I want to now introduce our third guest today, Denise Gonzales Crisp. And I'm going to read another excerpt from the Design Observer article that kind of talks about who DesignInquiry is and is not for. So here's my quote. While many facts remain slippery, one comment recurs and is heard again and again. DesignInquiry is not for everyone. But maybe it is for everyone, so long as you're okay with mosquitoes, no internet, sharing a bedroom with ghosts and nighttime passersby. If you are not comfortable with deliberate discomfort as a way to move through a research or design investigation that you didn't even know you were about to embark upon, then DI might not be for you. If you aren't okay with cooking, cleaning, and schmoozing with total strangers who become fast friends overnight, then you might want to look elsewhere. If you need to be told what to do, then DI might not be a good fit. Denise Gonzales Crisp, welcome to Universal Lunch.
Thank you so much. It's great to sit down, as Gabrielle said.
Yeah. So I want to ask you a question about DesignInquiry's attitude, because I think it has a very specific and clear attitude. I'm wondering if you can describe and articulate a little bit more about what that attitude is and perhaps what it signals or signifies to not just the people who come as participants, but perhaps also to the discipline at large?
Yeah, I feel like I'm a really good person to speak about this because I believe that I am one of those cases that Emily talked about who found DesignInquiry accidentally, as Margo said. I was looking for something different. And when I got there, all of the things that Margo described were what I experienced. So I'm using myself as an example. I would say that the process then after my first one, which was I think in 2008, and then I continued on and was on the board for a time, that I have changed dramatically in terms of a designer. I feel that I connected with a generosity that was always there, but rewarded at DesignInquiry, recognized, rewarded. And in fact, if you are not generous, it's not like someone's going to point at you and go, "You're not being generous." It's just the air
Maybe
around.
someone would.
Maybe would, but the air around you changes if you are not. So if you're going to be in the thick of it, then you have to participate in that generosity. I would say a big one for me has been, it's both challenging and liberating. Emily mentioned the idea of rigor. It isn't the kind of rigor that you might say, you're in a library and you need footnotes and you need, it's a concentration, I would say, that requires observation, requires engagement, etc. And the way that these events are framed allows tremendous opportunity for that to happen if you are going to, partake. The example of this exhibition, the topic is Futurespective. We have a lot of people here who, when we walked into this space, had certain ideas about how they might go, and every single thing that we have installed in here has changed in some way. So I would say that attitude of openness, as has been said before, I'd like to use this thing as an example behind me, if I may. So
sure,
this
yes.
was an idea this is, we have around the gallery a number of what we call aphorisms. They become prompts for what can happen throughout the space and throughout the exhibition. So this one is in a common space. It says, "We do our best work together," and that's made with sandpaper discs on the wall. All right, so when the first concern about the discs, this is going somewhere. The first concern was that they would stick too much on the wall. The second one was that they're not sticking on the wall. So when I walked in this morning, they continued to be falling off, right? And we're like, that's interesting. Steve came over and then we talked about somebody said we do brads. There was a little confab of 5 people and we came up with a completely different way of dealing with it, which is we're going to paint over it and then as the things fall off, which they inevitably will, it will remain. So we couldn't have thought of that without the group doing it. And that has happened in literally everything that's in this exhibition, so we brought a certain kind of cans of things to work with. And then everybody who's been participant, including ourselves, have been open to mixing the colors, mixing it up, throwing it out, whatever it is. So I would say that is the liberating and the challenging part about DI.
I want to,
because it's your expectations that are constantly being both undermined and expanded.
Absolutely, and I would say that to me would be the one that would be the hardest. That it's not for everybody. Because if you don't, by the end of the week, figure that out, then you're not going to walk away with much.
I like that you brought up the the aspect of generosity that feels really to me. I think our first year that we did in DesignInquiry, we were there together. That was
that's right.
That was both of our first years, right?
That's right.
And I was like, I don't know, early 20s, like really early.
And I was
career.
like, and I think I was about your age, right?
I'd love to talk more about that. And to me, the kind of the push and pull of that design process, like, can be frustrating for some people, I think, but because there's such a pervasive sense of generosity, I think it's that generosity that helps buoy the kind of attitude of being there and not worrying too much about figuring it out together.
Mm-hmm. Yes, absolutely. And I love that you added figuring it out together. And that is the liberating part, because I think in design sometimes, maybe it's in any practice, it's easy to feel pretty lonely or feel like all the decisions you have to make, and those decisions are going to reflect back on you. When you give up that ownership in a way, and it becomes a part of something bigger, and you know that it's going to be influenced by others, and you know that it's quickly going to not be the owner of that, it's less lonely and it's less stressful. Well, ask me after the show. But it's less stressful and it's dispersed. It's a sort of, it's a dispersal of activity.
Mm-hmm. So now I want to turn my gaze back to my co-host, Gabrielle. And Gabrielle, I'm going to ask you to take off your co-host hat and put on your co-curator hat. Oh my God, it's a new person. And I wanted to ask you, Gabrielle, about to contextualize perhaps DesignInquiry's place in a historical sense of alternative schools, special places of education for designers like Black Mountain College, or the Blueprint for Counter Education, which was also mentioned in the Design Observer article. Can you give us some thoughts about how you might contextualize this activity that DesignInquiry has been engaging in for the past decade at least? How does that situate itself within history?
I think one of the most challenging things about answering that question has to do with something Emily brought up, which is about ephemera. When we think about the legacy of the kinds of design institutions that radically changed how we teach and how we practice, usually they are tied to what they have left behind. Whether that is the physical site of a campus or school, from the Bauhaus to Black Mountain, or they've left a series of kind of artifacts. Blueprint for Counter Education is, of course, the best example of that. I'd like to imagine that DesignInquiry sits not in between those two extremes, but that on a kind of Kinsey scale of pedagogical significance, that we're constantly shifting back and forth between
pedagogical
things that can be documented. Yes, pedagogical queer. Well, yeah, because I think that embracing queerness as a methodology that implies a rejection of the normative, whether that is disciplinary, whether that is in terms of the artifacts that are going to be produced, whether that is where the thing takes place. I think that's really important. DesignInquiry was someone once, and they meant this very much as a pejorative, compared DesignInquiry to camping, and that was camping in a out in nature
in the
sense.
woods.
in the woods as opposed to with hands on hip. Though I'd like to think that both kinds of camp are equally valuable, because when for potentially radical investigation, and that's part of where the significance of design inquiry lies. I think, as was the case with, say, Black Mountain and Blueprint for Counter-Education, and we can name other kinds of sort of pedagogical events, many feminist projects to kind of rethink the way in which all forms of design education took place, or attempts to better incorporate the different design disciplines into a single pedagogy. It took a long time for the real significance of those institutional and pedagogical practices to really find their place in, I'm not going to say canon, but in a kind of continuum of significance. And I think that design inquiry's generosity, which has been referred to earlier, which is a kind of insistence on not putting our stamp on everything, but recognizing that the designers and all of our participants will give credit where credit is due, but that it's not essential. If someone goes on and becomes the dean of a program and completely remakes it in the image of design inquiry, but never mentions us, so be it. We don't need the mention, because we know that the impact exists.
Is out there, yeah.
Yeah, and I think, to your point about something that is perhaps in between the academy and that which is considered kind of completely alternative, is we're always going to be walking those extremes, because the vast majority of us come from the academy or from professional practice. So we all have hands in many pots or feet in many spheres.
You, in your answer, you brought up the notion of the legacy of some of these movements or happenings in education in these special places are largely now measured by the artifacts that they leave behind. And I think that's a good segue to bring back our guests into this conversation. So I want to welcome back Denise Gonzales Crisp and Margo Halverson. Welcome back, gang. And I want to talk a little bit about this exhibition, Futurespective, in relation to the artifacts that have been created and are now on display. And what strikes me most about this exhibition upon walking in last night is not that it feels like an exhibition, but it feels much more active than that. And I'm wondering if you, the panel, can talk a little bit about the way that you've approached curating this exhibition, because it covers about at least a decade of design inquiry. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
I think Denise said it when she had the example of the sandpaper project. Until we had everything in our hands, we didn't know what was going to happen. And that's been the way, I think, of the last 2.5 years we've been planning this. And I think what we're trying to do is give context, not to reminisce or make an archive, but to give context so that whoever sees, and I think actually with this show you're going to somehow be involved versus just looking. There's so many things to do and participate and pinball machine through that it's going to be a really active kind of participation of, I guess, seeing instead of looking. And there's a lot of ways into the practice we've been, but it's not showing what we've done. It's using what we've done and what we're doing in this exhibition to imagine new ways of working. If you haven't tried this kind of unknown.
Yeah, so if an example of that is the Anita Cooney, one of the board members, designed these tables, which are essentially, plywood on IKEA legs that go up and down. So they are by definition mobile, not in terms of doing this, but can also be used in a variety of ways. And they have been adopted. We just had them. They've been adopted in various ways by all of us here. And they become staging tables right now. They'll become dining tables and buffet tables in future. They'll become areas to make things. For instance, Margo's students were charged with this week in a workshop to make a gesture to the people who are going to be here at the event, the opening on Friday. And so I'm starting to see these really cool little prompts and opportunities that are on these tables around the room. So it's not, and there are things, I like that word context. So we think of there is some context for what has gone before. There's work that has been inspired by both topic as well as having gone through just being a design inquirer. There's, a bread making station that will be active periodically. We have prompts on the wall, as I mentioned, that kind of infuse the place with a sort of attitude. So I think those are all ways that we're trying to get people into this in a way that where they haven't committed to doing it, which is essential, right, when you go to a design inquiry, but to be exposed to this as a way of thinking and acting.
And I think it's a design inquiry. It's not showing it, it's doing it. This exhibition is very much about who got here when, and where was their space, and what did they bring in order to contribute. So it's in flux. And it will end when we have to get out today. That's where it'll be, and it'll keep changing over the weeks as well.
Margo, I want to ask, Denise mentioned that your students have been asked to, in her words, make a gesture. Is that what you said, Denise?
That was the prompt that Emily and Rod Sayer gave.
Yes, our designers in residence, Emily and Rod, asked them to make a gesture.
Can you, this must be such, I imagine, such an exciting opportunity for the students at MECA who are literally just on the other side of the wall from the ICA. To not only see the artifacts from Design Inquiry, but in a sense to do one, to have an opportunity right here in their home to do one. Can you talk a little bit about what that's been like?
It's been really great because I know over the years and every summer I get recharged as well with my own teaching, and I bring that into the classroom. So now I think they're seeing a little bit of the DNA of where this comes from. The improvising, the student who wants to know, what are we going to be doing next class? And I usually answer, I don't know, depends where we end today. And so they're seeing it in action. What?
How does that resonate with your students when you say, I don't know?
Well, I don't know. But honestly, it truly is something that I believe in and embody. And it's about listening and watching and responding to who's in the room. So that comes to teaching, and I think they're seeing that happen here. And I think they're really inspired because they have the prompt from Emily and Rod, which is a performative. We also have an academic studies class being taught by Marie Shirkus here. And then they're in the middle of a project, Emotional Transaction, and her seminar class is about affect. And so they're doing reading, writing, discussion there. And then in my core class, it's all kind of connected around the topic of currency, both of our classes together. So the work will be happening in the ICA. So we tell them this is a working laboratory, and we have printmaking, we're intersecting with them, several other design classes. But just this morning, then they were Rod and Emily they were having kind of a run through of what's going to happen, what the students are doing Friday night at the opening, and then they turned around and they're talking to Steve Bowden and Pete, and they're showing them about their, I guess we're going to do a tour, right?
Yes,
so
we will.
They'll see what they're doing, and then they went in and talked to you, Jimmy, about this, and I think already it's like, what? This is not designing a logo.
I can only imagine how exciting it must be for them.
Yeah.
Well, it's interesting, though. I wonder about this issue of excitement or fear and panic, because it is unlike a typical DesignInquiry participant who has willingly entered into the space of the gathering. Because of the power dynamic of the classroom, they are being told that they have to do this. So it is an interesting, it's not quite the same thing. It's a kind of perhaps a hybrid condition somewhere in between the classroom or the academic studio and the true or authentic gathering.
But
hey, is this please?
I would argue that it's the same thing, because some people come to DesignInquiry expecting a certain thing, to extend their research, to learn something, and once they get there, they're not. So anyway, it can shift. But yes, they are graded. Yeah, that's a different.
Well, we're all graded. In life. So it'll be fine, I'm sure.
So Jimmy, is this a good time for us to sort of shift gears and do a bit of a walkthrough?
Yes, I think so. Let me do a quick recap for any viewers who are joining us right now. This is Universal Lunch on the occasion of Futurespective. And we are currently being joined by Denise Gonzales Crisp and Margo Halverson, two of the 4 co-curators of the exhibition. And I'm going to sign off right now. And I think Gabrielle, my co-host, I'll start. I'm going to transition out of this room in the back of the gallery now to roving reporter. And we can begin our preview of the exhibition. Okay, I think I'm gonna let's see how this goes. No, everyone else should stay on.
So, Jimmy, do you want to come up to the front?
Yeah, I'll come up with
your roving camera.
Yeah, and then everyone.
And we'll move from the front and the back to the back.
Yeah.
Let me tell our audience we're here at the Institute for Art, which is located on the ground floor of the Maine College of Art on Congress Street in Portland. That is the main drag, the main commercial drag of Portland, Maine. The gallery space is a former department store. The ground floor of a former department store.
Okay, we're gonna
so that to give you a sense of where we go through.
Okay, I'm coming.
So Jimmy is now walking from the back of the ICA, which consists of a series of 3 main galleries and a kind of long corridor space. Coming up to the front, which of course was the kind of entrance lobby of the department store. And what we've attempted to do with this exhibition is to arrange each of the galleries to enhance not just the exhibition itself, but to attempt to recreate some aspect of a DesignInquiry gathering. So I suppose one could say that this front gallery is an attempt to set the stage. And in that sense, what it does is offer a reading room with ample display of the various publications, both made by design inquirers and also that have influenced design inquirers. It's an invitation to peruse these materials, to sit by the fire, as we have a MECA student doing right now, to have an opportunity to kind of hang out and potentially create community in this space. We also have a couple of installations that are still in progress, including a museum vitrine that will be filled with important rare objets and ephemera artifacts gathered from a decade's worth of design inquiry. You'll see that's still very much a work in progress, but it does give you a full range of objects of significance, from Bic pens that have been branded to a hacked jar of Vegemite and the like. And also, the largest installation in this space is the fabulous timeline for design inquiry that really shows the way in which all historical events have led to design inquiry. And with that, let me invite our student guest to join us. You can just go and follow Jimmy, and then introduce ourselves and tell us who you are here at MECA.
Sure. I'm a senior here at MECA. I'm a graphic design major. I'm also an RA. I do quite a bit around MECA, but I'm just here to talk about the exhibition and what's kind of going on from a student standpoint, and what we're doing as students with our head of the department, Charles and Margo. Just exploring what's going on, I guess.
And can I just jump in to say that Ollie helped us yesterday with one of our projects. So this is very much a work in progress. We gave you a prompt, and you and some of your colleagues just immediately ran with it, helping us with a project that's in the front gallery. So pedagogy in action.
Yeah, it's been a lot of a lot of the seniors are showing up, and we're also doing some stuff during the exhibition opening on tomorrow. But we've been in and out, just doing stuff, helping out, just making sure that everything's going smoothly for our guests here at MECA, and learning from the experiences from older graphic designers that we can take from and really learn. Yeah, it's been really awesome.
Yeah, so do you want to talk about the timeline? Was there something in particular that you wanted to point out?
I think this is where I gravitated towards when I looked at the rest of the exhibition. I really like the exhibition. I think the printing press too is really interesting. But as an art history minor, I really every time I stand here and look at everything, even though I've read it over and over. Because there's just some really pivotal art history moments in here that I'm and seeing them from different perspectives. It's really interesting to see really pivotal moments in pop culture and mixing that with art history on top of what Design Inquiry was doing, and just kind of putting that. It's really quite great, and so I've been really enjoying it and putting in my own little these things also happened. But it's been really great.
So should we continue our? Thank you very much. Should we continue our walk through the gallery now? Heading on down the corridor past the pop-up shop. What is it they say? Exit through the gift shop. In this sense, much of what design inquirers have made is for sale. As Jimmy pans down the array of objects, we have publications, we have household goods. Those are melamine plates that you were seeing. We have postcards. We have knitted hats. we are a diverse group of thinkers and makers who take full advantage of the mass customization that is possible in the 21st century. And next to the pop-up shop, Jimmy is walking down and entering into the video gallery, where I think we have one of our co-curators who is going to offer some off-the-cuff commentary about that space.
So this room has 7 videos. One of the things that we happen to have is an incredible documentarian in not only Margo, but pretty much anybody who comes to the events. But rather than show these past videos, this is a project that kind of jams them together under different categories. So if I could, I don't think the mute's off here. Can I turn on this? I want you to hear. This is called music. Oh, here. Jimmy, can you read this? Can you see an audio?
No, I cannot.
No, don't worry about it. Anyway, so even though if you're looking at this here, it doesn't look like music, it's all making these really interesting combination of sounds. So anything from sea salt being related to footsteps, and these combine to create a sense of the sound that is alive. There's ping pong balls going out. We have something called DI Gothic. We have something here that is people that are talking about maybe what they got out of a design inquiry, what they think design is, what they thought it was before, and what they think it is now after that experience. So that's what that is. Over here we have Index, which is a project that has been going on for probably about a year. It's not projecting right now, but it's an online collection of terms that are related to the work that is actually the work and experience of design inquiry. And so it's and Gabrielle, you'll be able to say what this reference is, but this will be exposed onto the wall. And then we have 2, urgent and timely. And then we have these. This is the only artifact that we brought physically from Vinyl Haven. And this is a project I think that Gabrielle did, where these woven chairs were busted, and so just found materials around the space to repair them. So these will go on the wall. So that's this room. So this room will be, this cone here will be for this one. And then everything else will be sort of at a low volume. So it should feel like a buzz in here in the same way that it does at an inquiry.
Yeah, I think what we're seeing here is a real attempt to give some sense of the immersive quality of design inquiry. And now we're in the main corridor space, where what is a kind of overlapping project, the design inquiry vernacular, which speaks about place and local, and then that is incorporated with the design inquiry universe, which is representations of the work that hundreds of thinkers and makers have contributed to this exhibition. And I should note that this includes work that was both done at design inquiry gatherings, work that was done for the exhibition, and then work that one could argue is unrelated to design inquiry, but that in essence has been subtly influenced by it, merely because the inquirers have acknowledged that that level of connection.
Okay, not go beyond the outer one. Just the end of that.
Charles, do you want to talk a little bit about the bread making station? Bread has long been a part of the practice of design inquiry, partially because Charles just likes to make bread, but then it became a way of all inquirers sort of learning and making together.
Hi.
Hi, Jimmy.
Okay, I think I'm back, and that was a quick preview of the exhibition. So every Thursday, Gabrielle and I will be here remotely. And Gabrielle, will you tell people about our upcoming guests?
Yes, for the next couple of weeks, for the next 2 weeks, we are going to be focused on folks who are participating in the Futurespective. So we are delighted to welcome Wright and Kate Jarboe, Judith Vandenboom, and Gunther Wehrmeyer, who are going to be both residents at MECA and also participating in the Futurespective inquiry that is taking place. And then the week after that, we're going to be meeting with board members of DesignInquiry, Peter Hall and Anita Cooney, as well as a number of really interesting guests who are coming to us from the worlds of fashion, of publishing, of kind of all disciplines of design and practice. And now it's so exciting that Jimmy has come back and entered my space.
Yeah, this will be perhaps the only time that we'll be in the same room.
I think that is actually true.
Yeah, and so we look forward to not only finessing our live stream, but also having these conversations around the past, the future, the present of design and design inquiry. We hope you join us.
Absolutely, for Universal Lunch.
Bye.
Goodbye for now. We'll see you next week. Thank you.